Kemoshim. Then we go to Devarim, which is a summary of the first four. So these two, and we usually, and the end of this Chumash is two parshas, MATOT-MASSEI, and they're usually read together, almost always. Not always, but very often read together. And I got a friendly criticism from somebody that for the beginners who listen on the tapes, I should summarize the Sedra, because a lot of people don't know what it's about. So before we start, just for 3 seconds, I tell you that the two Sedras contain the following things. It opens up with all the laws of vows, and we've had shurim on this, and we'll have them in the future because there are lots of sikkahs on it. Essentially, when a Jew promises something, it's central to his continued existence, that he keeps his word. Not literal existence, but the key, the direction that he was on becomes disturbed when a Jew doesn't keep his word. So one of the, in the Gemara it says that when you die and you go up to the pearly gates, you're going to be asked, were you honest in business? And one of the commentaries says that question is, did you keep your word? Anyway, the first part of it is about vows. Second part about it is the thing what we'll be doing tonight about the two tribes of Gad and Reuven. We pronounce it God because of the vowel underneath. The next section talks about the 42 stops that Am Yisrael had in the Midbar between the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim and the time of their entry into Israel. And there's very deep secrets of Torah in those 42 stops, because that is really 42 stages in every Jew's life. That's another set of sikkahs, another night of shirim. Then there's the section on Orei Miklot. Orei Miklot means cities of refuge, where if you killed somebody by accident, you could run there and be spared from what's called the Goel Adom, and you lived there until the Kohen Gadol died, and when the Kohen Gadol died, you could leave. If you left earlier and one of the relatives, blood avengers, got you, then that's your bad luck. On the other hand, if they came into the city of refuge and harmed you there, then they're murderers. That's another series of, there's very deep code in all of that as well. It finishes off with the daughters of Tzalofchad, who there were 5 daughters, no sons. Eretz Yisrael, Eretz Canaan was being divided up to become Eretz Yisrael, and it was given to men, and they had no man in their family to take their portion, so they came to Moshe and said, what should we do? Moshe talked to God and came back with the answer. What we're going to do tonight is the section on Gad and Reuven, and you'll see that this is a pathway to an extraordinary set of life skills, and in particular, the Rebbe makes it very personal and very direct to you and me. But it's quite a long journey to get to that. So, l'chaim, l'chaim. So what the story is this: Am Yisrael have had Yetzias Mitzrayim. They have been in the Midbar, the desert, for 40 years, while all people over the age of 20 who witnessed the story of the Meraglim, and we'll come back to that in a moment, they had to die off because of the sin that they committed. and now it was time, they'd all died off, and now it's time to enter Eretz Canaan and make it Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Canaan, I remind you, and Eretz Yisrael have the same geographic boundaries. It's just that one is a Gashmias focus, and one is a spiritual focus. It was Am Yisrael's job to enter Eretz Canaan and make it into Eretz Yisrael, meaning to go into the land and convert the land, make the land Kodesh, make it holy. Now, as they were approaching Israel, they were on the other side of the Jordan River. For anybody who's been to Israel and knows where the Jordan River, I must tell you, when I first saw the Jordan River, I was surprised how small it was. It's so small. You see pictures of the River Danube, and here's the Jordan River's little. Anyway, they got to the other side of the Jordan River, and the tribes of God and Reuven came to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, "You're about to enter the land." Now, Am Yisrael had a mitzvah to fight the 7 nations that occupied the land of Canaan, Eretz Canaan. And they had to fight them, displace them, and take the land and divide it up amongst Am Yisrael according to how God told them to do so. So the tribes of Reuven and Gad, who were they were shepherds. They had an enormous amount of livestock, much more than anybody else in amongst the tribes. They came to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, "Look, we've got a proposition for you. We would prefer to stay on this side of the Jordan River. Why? Because the land here is rich and good for pasturing flocks. We have lots of flocks, and it would suit us better to stay on this side of the river." So the Chumash goes through this briefly, probably 10, 12 psukim, where Moshe says, are you serious? You're telling me that you want to send your brothers in to fight, and you'll sit here and lick up the fat of the land, and you're sending your brothers in to fight and risk their lives? And so God and Reuven say, Chas v'shalom, they didn't mean that at all. Not only that, but not only will they go into Eretz Canaan and fight, but they will stay until the land has been divided and allocated to each of the Shvatim, each of the tribes. So on that condition, Moshe reluctantly agrees. Now he agrees, but he reluctantly agrees. And one of the things that he says to them when they come up with this proposition, he says, "You're kidding me. Again, we're going to have the story of the Meraglim." Now, let me remind you about the story of the Meraglim. When they came to a point where Hashem says to Moshe, send scouts, Meraglim, to check out the best way to conquer Eretz Canaan, and the 12 princes, the Nasiim of the Shvatim, of the tribes, took a group of men, each of them, and they went through across length and breadth of Eretz Canaan, and they looked at it and they were absolutely daunted. They were daunted by the size and the power and the majesty and of everything, and they came back to Moshe, except for 2 of them, except for Yeshua and Kolev. They came back to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, "We can't do this. You send us in to find the best way. We're telling you we can't do it. There's no way we can do this." And they were crying, and the people were crying, and Hashem said, "You're crying about this? I'll give you something to cry about. It'll be Tisha B'Av, and we are in the 3 weeks before Tisha B'Av at the moment, so this is why it's relevant to what we're talking about." And in order to understand the dialogue between God and Reuven on the one hand, and Moshe Rabbeinu and his displeasure on the other hand, we have to revise this position with the Meraglim. Why did the Meraglim find it so impossible to go into Eretz Canaan? So the answer we learn in Hasidus, which comes from Kabbalah, is that they didn't want to give up their relationship with their God, which was personal and commonplace, and change it for having to work the land, having to run a country, having to have shops and buy stock and give tzedakah and earn money and fix their kids' teeth and pay the mortgage and deal with all the fools on the road and the people who want to steal from you and cheat you and rob you. They wanted to stay in the Midbar where they talked to God all day. They sat and learned Torah and they enjoyed a Giloi Elokus, a revelation of godliness. They picked up their mon every morning, which was miraculous. They had the clouds of glory, which were miraculous. They had the water from the Miriam's, in Miriam's Zakus, they had water pouring out of rocks. Why did they want to go into the land and have to fight the taxman? So the answer is, as everybody knows from plenty of other shiurim, that's not why we are born. We are born for a general reason, and you have a choice. You know, in next week's Chumash, it says that Hashem puts before you life and death, and it says b'chata b'chaim. You have to choose life, right? And all the commentators have the same question: what sort of a choice is that? Well, who wouldn't choose life? What do you mean choose life? So the answer is the truth is that, and most people don't even know what I'm talking about now. I know everybody in this room does, but most people have never heard these things. That when it says choose life, it means choose life rather than existence. Most people exist. You've got 8.25 million or 8.5 million nefashos on this planet. They get up in the morning, from the time they were old enough to think at all, to the time they go to Rookwood, and they have no idea why they were alive. They have no idea what their purpose in life was. They have no idea how to access that purpose. All they do is seek as much gratification as possible, as much as they can afford, and if they can't afford it, they try and afford it, whether it's honestly or dishonestly, whatever it is, and they try and buy themselves gratification and avoid pain. And that's very normal. It's how the nefesh habahamis, the animal soul, functions. That's how everybody functions at one level. But then, if you live 60, 70, 120 years like that, when you go to Rookwood, you end your existence. You don't end a life, because you haven't had a life. That's not a life. So, what is the life? As we learn over and over again, life is serving Hashem. What does that mean, serving Hashem? Making a dira b'taktoinim. What does that mean? Making a dwelling place for Hashem in physicality. What does that mean? It means accepting what the mission statement we got on Mount Sinai, that we should bring Ruchnius into Gashmius and elevate Gashmius into Ruchnius. Bring holiness into physicality and elevate physicality into godliness. But the only way you can do that is by dealing with physicality. So where the Meraglim were wrong, although it sounds like they had a wonderful intention, where they were fundamentally wrong was that they were avoiding the responsibility of living their lives, facing the daily tests that Hashem puts in front of us, and the daily tests that Hashem puts in front of us. By overcoming those challenges, you make another brick in the dwelling place for Hashem in this world. And to the extent that people try and dodge and avoid that, they don't understand why we're alive. I keep saying this, but it needs to be said over and over again. The Tzemach Tzedek, in his work Derek Mitzvah Secha, says that the only reason, not one of the reasons, the only reason that a neshama comes down into a guf, that a soul comes down into a body, is for its nisyonis, is for its challenges. That's the only reason you're born. So a person who sits there and trembles and wants to live a life without any challenges, of course nobody wants the challenges, but you have to understand that they're your welfare, they're your springboard for greatness, and ultimately for happiness and purpose in life. That can only be if you and I are busy with the world, elevating the Gashmias. So to try and avoid the Gashmias, whether you're trying to do it by staying in the midbar, or smoking something, or going up onto a mountain and injecting something, or getting drunk, all of these things are avoiding facing your challenges, which is, at the end of the day, so tragic, because that's the very reason you're alive. And the challenge that you and I have, as I keep repeating, and I'm only repeating because the Rebbe repeats it so often in so many sikhs, the challenges that you and I have are deliberate challenges caused by Ashkaka Pratis, by divine providence, for you, because only you can deal with that challenge. And only you have the exact equipment to deal with your challenge. Nobody else has it. They have different challenges and different sets of equipment. Some look the same, but they're not. So when Moshe hears from the tribes of God and Reuven that they want to stay outside of Eretz Canaan, outside of Eretz Yisrael, and they want to do it because of their flocks, he's very upset. So you know what he says to them? It says in the Chumash, he says, "You're like the Meraglim, like your fathers. What did we wait for your fathers to die for? You're doing the same. You're making the same stupid, dumb mistake." On the one hand, Hashem wants to anoint you as being his shliach to make the world a great, wonderful place where there's a Gilui Elokus, where there's a revelation of godliness, where everything sings, and you say, "I want to go to sleep." So God and Reuven say to Moshe, "It's not so. That's not fair. It's not right, because we are going to go in and we'll spearhead the conquest, and not only will we fight, but we won't go back we'll leave our wives and children here, we'll go in and we'll fight, and not only will we fight, but we won't go back to our wives and children until the land is divided and settled." Right? So Moshe accepted that. But he still wasn't very happy with it. He accepted it, so that means it's okay. If Moshe Rabbeinu says it's okay, it's okay. But we have repeated statements that he wasn't completely happy. We'll see why. It's not a hard one, right? Why was it that God and the tribes of God and Reuven were so rich in cattle? So we've learned there's a lot of revision here tonight, but we've learned over and over again that there are three brachas. There's a Baal Shem Tov, the famous Baal Shem Tov, that there are three brachas: money, health, nachas from children. Those three brachas are almost not controlled by us. Almost not controlled at all. And it's a big myth. People think that if they work harder, or if they are cleverer, or if they are less honest or more honest, or that they'll make more money. It's not true. And some of the stupidest people I've ever known have made fortunes. I've acted for people who've been so stupid, and anything they touch, they'd make millions from it. And people who are, and then you say, well, he's very industrious. He works so hard, and he works up 20-hour day. And I know plenty of people who are very rich and lazy, like dogs. They bone lazy. And health, we all look. It's a mitzvah from the Rambam, from Maimonides. It's a mitzvah that we have to look after the body. You have to try, do your very best to look after the body. But that doesn't mean that you control the bracha for health. And I keep saying that I went through university with a guy, went through law school with a guy who dropped dead in Bondi Junction at 41 jogging, and he was Olympic fit. And my father-in-law, Oliver Sholem, he lived to be 97, and he had cake for breakfast, cake for lunch, cake for dinner. So health is a bracha. And nachas from children, you have lots of families that have got 4, 5, 6 children, and 1 or 2 of them, 4 or 5 of them are fine, and 1 or 2 of them have problems, very serious problems. So they are brachas that we don't control. Now, if God and Reuven had so much cattle, and by the way, that was the measure of money, the livestock was their wealth. When it says that they were laden with livestock, it means that they were very, very rich. So the question was, now, and what was their profession? Their profession was that they were shepherds. They had livestock. So what does a shepherd do? A shepherd has all day and all night to just sit there. So what did they do? They learned Torah. And they were very spiritual people. And they said, we want to continue being spiritual people. We are living proof that the bracha of wealth has nothing to do with industry and hard work. It's a bracha. We want to pay for that bracha by sitting and learning. We want to pay for that bracha by living lives of kedusha. We don't want the temptation of business, which is going to make us to test whether or not we're honest people. We don't want the business of whether we're going to cheat on our taxes or inflate our insurance claims or whatever it is. We don't want those tests. We want to sit here and learn. And we believe that Hashem agrees with us, because otherwise why would he have made us so rich? We believe in Hashgacha Pratis. We believe it's a bracha. We got the bracha, so leave us the land to look after it. And we'll look after it, and we'll continue that bracha, and we will learn and invigorate Am Yisrael. I'll come to that in a moment. So when Moshe wasn't impressed by that, but what he was impressed by was their offer to go in and fight and stay until the land was divided. Now, you need to know that this issue of certain Jews wanting to sit and learn all day has been a historical problem in Am Yisrael. And it's a political problem in Israel. It's a political problem in Israel today, and the two arguments go like this: that let's go to an extreme, the army. So there are a whole lot of religious Jews in Eretz Yisrael who won't go to the army. And they won't go to the army. Why? What's their argument? Their argument is that there has to be 2 tribes, 2 out of 12, whatever that percentage is, 8%, whatever it is, who invigorate Am Yisrael with learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. Why is Am Yisrael high? Why have we survived? All the host nations that have imprisoned us and burned us and holocausted us and Kremnizer us and burned us at the stake and crusaded us and why? Because of our refusal to separate from Torah and mitzvahs. The Jews have held fast to Torah. That's the guarantee for Jewish continuity. Ronan, you need anything?
No, you don't.
Poor guy. So if it's necessary to have a continuity based on holding on to the Torah and learning the Torah, and that's how the information's passed on generation to generation. How can you and I learn the laws of Shabbos if the previous generation didn't learn the laws of Shabbos and pass it on to our generation? You know, you have a shaila, you have a question. I'll give you an example. Friday nights, we have all the children, grandchildren, and they play games. They play board games, banana, gram, and rummy cubes, and those things. And for one of those games, which one of them brought this week, that they have a timer. You know, one of those things, like a bulb at the top, a bulb at the bottom, and you turn it over. And there's a problem in halakha with measuring. You're not allowed to measure on Shabbos, right? So the question is whether that's measuring or not. If it's measuring, we can't play that game on the Shabbos table. And if it's not measuring, then it's wrong to stop the kids having fun, you know? It says that the best rovs in the world are the ones who are able to find the most leniency and still not, because it's easy to say everything's forbidden, you know. Be miserable. Sit there and be miserable, little kids, you know. But for that, you need somebody to have learned it, and somebody in the generation before to have learned it, to teach it, to write a book so that he can read it. So we believe that there must be a portion of Am Yisrael that's committed to just learning, because there isn't time. You don't have enough time in one lifetime to get through the whole Torah properly. And on the other hand, if you do that, we'll come to that perspective in a minute. The perspective of one group of people is we have to have a number of Jews who sit and learn Torah all day to the exclusion of anything else. And then you have the other group that says, what do you mean? We should do the fighting, and you should sit on your tuchus, and then there's a very big sincerity question, because if a person really wants to sit and learn for the benefit of Am Yisrael and for the benefit of passing on the torch to the next generation, that's one thing. But what about all the guys who are malingerers? They're just lazy. They want to live off the government. In Israel, there's a group of people, as you know, they don't pay tax. They don't pay any tax. They don't go in the army. They just take. They just take. They don't give. They say, of course they give. What do they give? They give more than everybody else. They're giving spirituality. So this whole Sidra is about the tension between those two positions. And the truth is, like all Torah, both are correct. We do need some people who have to sit and learn, but they have to be truthful, genuine scholars who are sitting and learning in order to invigorate Am Yisrael with the fire of God, of Ruchnius. And then we've got to have all the people who are the ordinary day workers going to work on the bus or the train, fighting with the traffic, dealing with fixing their kids' teeth, going to doctors, going to watch the tennis, all of that physical stuff that we do, and they have to be able to do that. Going back to the army, if you think, let's say that you even agree with the people who say that you have to have a group of Jews who sit and learn. Let's say that you even agree with it.
Age?
Huh?
At what age?
Yeah, we'll come to that in a second. It's very important.
Yeah.
It's a percentage. I'll come to that in a minute. It's an important question. Just hold that thought. But if you've got people who are sitting and learning, and they claim that they don't need an IDF, you're talking to an idiot. Because the brachas that we get from Hashem are conditional on effort in Gashmias, effort in physicality. So we need a very strong IDF. We need the strongest IDF that we can possibly muster. But if a strong IDF on its own won't do it, not for Jews. It'll do it for Goyim, for Gentiles, won't do it for Jews. Because Jews have to have a spiritual component. They have to live, not exist. And living comes from the balance between physicality and spirituality. And Jews need the spirituality. And it's incredible how generation after generation, family after family, people leave it behind on purpose, leave it behind by disgust, leave it behind because they're disillusioned with Hashem, or make some mistake one way or another, or fall in love with somebody who leads them astray, or whatever it is that, and then somehow or other their kids come back or their grandkids come back, and Am Yisrael continues to repopulate itself. Why? Because a Jew craves a certain amount of spirituality, just craves it. They don't even know why. I'm fond of sharing with people because I'm not shy to tell them. 55 years ago, I didn't know what Sukkot was. Never heard of it. But you're conscious of an emptiness. You know, how long can you say that my life is going to be about waiting for the next model Jaguar? Assuming you can afford the next model. First of all, some people dream of it. That's their whole life. Then they have to get enough money to get the Jaguar. So they have the Jaguar. So where now? What now? The next model Jaguar? And you're going to really give your life away for the next model Jaguar? But that's what people do. Most people do that because they don't understand that there is a synthesis, a necessary synthesis for every Jew, that he mixes a spirituality with the physicality. He needs both perspectives. And it's often very difficult to see the spiritual perspective because we're not Nevi'im, we're not prophets, we're not rebbes. Ordinary people in the street are not rebbes. And let me share a story with you there was a famous rabbi, not a rebbe, a rabbi, called the Rishas. He was a very big Talmud Chacham. And he had a free loan fund. He was very rich. He owned ships. And he was very rich, very clever, and he was a big Talmud Chacham, and he used to sit and learn all day, and his ships made fortunes. One day, tailor came to him and asked to borrow money from the free loan fund. I've told this story many times, but it's worth telling in this context. And he wanted to borrow money to build because he got a contract for uniforms, and he made these uniforms, and he borrowed the money for, let's say, 3 months. I can't remember what it was, what the details were, and he borrowed the money from the Rishas, and he made the uniforms, sold them, made money, was successful, and he was a very honest man. And now that he'd made the money, he came to the base Midrash where the Rishas was learning, and he wanted to pay back the money. So he comes to him and he says, "Yeah, I borrowed $3,000, whatever it was, and here's the $3,000. And the Rishas is learning, and he says, yes, 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 and he takes the money and he puts it into the back of the safer, and he keeps going and waves to him. And the guy goes, and this was after, let's say it was a 3-month loan, this was after 2 months. After 3 months, the Rishas sees, and the Rishas didn't remember that at all. He was learning, he was concentrating on what he was learning. He paid no attention to it. Comes the 3rd month, and he does the books, and he sees that this guy still owes the money, and he's a bit perturbed because everyone says that he made a lot of money out of the uniform, so why doesn't he repay the debt? So he goes to see him, and he politely says, it's time to repay the debt. Do you have any problem to pay it? Because if you have a problem, we'll extend you some. So the guy says, no, I have no problem, I paid the debt. So the Rishas looks at him and he says, do you have any witnesses? He says, no. But I repaid it. You were sitting and learning, you were singing, and you're stuck in the back of the book. And the Rishas calls him to a din Torah. In Halacha, we need witnesses or writing. If you don't have witnesses or writing, you have to swear. And once you've sworn, you potter. So the Rishas takes him to court to the Beis Din, and there was no witnesses. So he says, I'm prepared to swear. And that's a big deal for a Jew, because I told you, we have this whole thing about vows, which has very big spiritual connotations if you're lying. So he takes his Sefer Torah and he swears. And the Rishas says, okay. So the law is, once you swear, you don't have to pay the money back, but the Rishas knows that he's a thief. So he goes into his shul, he was the rabbi of the shul, and he clops on the bimah. He says, I want everybody to know that Chaim Yankel, the tailor, who swore, doesn't owe me the money anymore because of the Beis Din, but he's a ganef. And he's stolen from me. And not only did he steal from me, but he stole from other people who could borrow from the fund. So predictably, the whole town ostracized him and the wife. They spat on her in the market. They didn't deal with him. Nobody bought any clothes from them. And cut a long story short, he became destitute. He had to leave the town, and he was destitute, and he was living under a bridge. He didn't even have a tent. And time goes by, the Rishas is learning, and he finds the money, and he feels so terrible, right? So he finds out where this guy is, and he goes, takes his wagon and a driver, and he goes there, and he finds him living under this bridge, and he comes to him and he says, I don't know what to say to you. I can't tell you how sorry I am. Yom Kippur's coming soon. I'm begging you for forgiveness. How can I make it up to you? So the guy says, make it up to me. Get out of here. You're sorry? I don't want to hear that you're sorry. You ruined my life. So the Rishas goes back. He's very upset. He goes back home. He calls the people to shul again, clops on the bimah. Says, I want you to know that Chaim Yankel, the tailor, did nothing wrong to me. He repaid the money. The man is a good man. I want him to come back here. I want everybody to deal with him. So you know what the people said? Like all, you can imagine what Jews say. He's a tzaddik, this rabbi. You know, the guy's a ganef, but he's a tzaddik and he's feeling sorry for him, so the Rishas can't help it. Nothing helps him. So he goes back to the tailor under the bridge, and he says, "Listen, what's the worst thing that's happened to you?" So the tailor says, "Well, truthfully, I have a daughter. She's 22, and she's never going to get married. Because of you, she's never going to get married, because everybody knows that she's the daughter of a ganef, and it's heartbreaking for me." So the Rishas says, "I have an idea. I have a son who's 23. Let me introduce them. And if they like each other and they get married, everybody will understand that I wouldn't marry my son to the daughter of a ganef." Right? So the tailor agrees. They introduce them. The story's got a lovely, happy ending. They fall in love, they get married, they have children, grandchildren, blah, blah, blah. So what is this a story about? When we learn this story in Fabrengens, what's the story about? The story is about Hashgacha Pratis, about that Hashem controls Shidduchim, controls the children and the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren. And what was the whole story about? How could Hashem bring this neshama of the daughter of a tailor, in a time when Jews respected learning much more than money? Learning was so if this guy was a simple tailor and there's no way his daughter could ever marry the son of the biggest rabbi in Talmud Okim in town. So the whole story is orchestrated by Hashem with Hashgacha Pratis in order that they should get married. And the only way they can get married is through this whole story. Why am I telling you this? Because even the Rishas, as he went from step to step through that story, he didn't know how it was going to end. He wasn't a prophet. He didn't know that Hashem wanted his son to marry this daughter. In the meantime, he just has a test every day of first of all lending the money, taking the money back and not acknowledging it properly, taking the guy to a din Torah, winning the din Torah and then defaming the guy, making him impoverished, doing tshuva, doing all of those things so that they could get married. But he doesn't see any of that. So you and I, when we spend our time during the day, every day, we don't see the big plan. We see each thing. You're running late for an appointment. Your kishkas are going round and round because somebody's waiting for you for an appointment. It's an important appointment. You don't see why the traffic jam's happening and why you have to be late and how it's better for you that you don't see any of that. What do you see? You see each. So we learn that you have to have a certain amount of betochen, right? You have to have a certain amount of trust in Hashem that it's going to happen. So when it says, why was Moshe Rabbeinu, this is very deep stuff, why was it Moshe Rabbeinu upset with God and Reuven? Not because they were like the Meraglim, because they proved to him that they weren't. The Meraglim didn't want to go into Israel and said to everybody, stay here, it's too hard. That's not what God and Reuven were doing. God and Reuven were saying, not only will we go in, we'll spearhead the thing and we'll do the fighting and we'll be there when you allocate the land to everybody. And so it's not the same thing at all. But Moshe is upset with them. Why? So there's next level is very deep. Because, and to explain that, I'm going to tell you a letter from the Rebbe. There's a letter from the Rebbe. He's writing to a shoiket. I'm sure I've said it before in this year, so for those people who are regulars, you may have heard this before. There's a shoiket who writes, the shoiket is a shoiket in Nowhereville. a town where there's no Jews, no minyan. It's a wilderness, and he's a shoiket there for all the towns around. His father dies, and he writes to the Rebbe this. He writes that he wants to know what to do. Should he throw up his job and go to the city where he had two brothers? Should he go to the city, I think to Los Angeles, or somewhere where they were, because his father died and he needs to daven from the Omid, and to daven from the Omid you need a minyan, and anyway he needs to say Kaddish for his father. But the problem is that his brothers are out of work, and he is supporting the brothers out of his parnos, out of his income from the shoiket, from being a shoiket. So he asks the Rebbe, should he stay there, continue shechting, continue getting paid, and therefore be able to support the brother and not be able to say Kaddish for the father? Or should he go to the city and give up the parnosa, but be able to say Kaddish for his one and only father that he loves so much all his life? So the Rebbe answers a fascinating letter. If anyone who wants this letter, just email me. I'll get one of the girls to email it to you. I have it on downloaded and that. So the Rebbe answers this. He says, if you have a bracha, money is a bracha, like we learned before, right? Once you're getting that bracha, it's not in order for you to throw it out the window and turn your back on it and say, I don't appreciate it. And the reality is that the person, the neshama that needs the Kaddish is your father's neshama, and he's going to have the Kaddish from the two brothers. So it's not as though his neshama is going without the Kaddish. So you are blessed with parnosa where you are, and you can continue to keep them alive with the benefit of your money. But and you won't be able to say Kaddish, but they will say Kaddish. So that you should stay where you are, right? And then the Rebbe adds this paragraph. He says, however, I don't know where you stand with your personal betochen. And you know, the Rebbe's not joking here. You can't pretend, right? If your betochen is strong enough, you will be able to go to the city and you will get the same parnosa, because Hashem will be able to give you the same parnosa in the city as he does where you are. And you'll be able to say Kaddish for your father and continue to keep your... But on what basis is that? The Rebbe starts off saying, I don't know you, and I don't know how strong your betochen is. So the Rebbe is saying, you really need the 100% total commitment of betochen, and then if you don't have it, don't pretend. Stay where you are, because you've got a bracha for parnosa there. So their argument that they need to stay on the other side of the Jordan River because they need to continue being shepherds and they need to be spiritual, and that there's enough, the ground is better for their flocks on the other side of the Jordan, and that allows them to be rich with that, and at the same time they can continue to be shepherds and worship Hashem, all the daven and learn and who says you can't do that when Hashem tells you to go to Eretz Yisrael, to do it in Eretz Yisrael? Who says that magically the land isn't going to be as good? So that's why Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't really happy with the answer, even though he accepted this issue of the fact that some of Am Yisrael need to learn, and some of Am Yisrael, and most of Am Yisrael need to do, and the ratio is about 2 in 12. That's what we have. And Rebbe was very clear. He said in a Fabring, and he said, this isn't for everybody to sit and learn. It's not for everybody. Most people need to be out there and be carpenters and bricklayers and tilers and lawyers, God forbid, and
About
doctors.
this, I just want to ask.
When we finish. Just when we finish.
After.
So, because we're running out of time, and I need to just add one last thing. There's a one curious piece in this that we haven't talked about. That when God and Reuven ask for being able to stay on the other side of the Jordan River and so on.
2 out of 12 is 17%.
17%. Okay. So when no.
No, it's 18. 18 and a half. It's 1/6.
Anyway, let's leave the maths.
16.6.
Yeah.
I will Google
Okay,
that.
all right.
Google.
Okay, 16. But so the Rebbe says not everybody fits into that. Only its maximum is 16.7. Doesn't use that figure, but that's what he's saying. The rest of us have to go to shul, have to put on film, have to keep Shabbos, but at the same time we have to be involved in Gashmias. Right. So when they finish their argument with Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe Rabbeinu accuses them of being like the Meraglim, and they refute that accusation by saying that they're going to go in and fight. And so then Moshe Rabbeinu says, so in that case, I will give the land on the other side of the Jordan to you, to the tribes of God, Reuven, and half the tribe of Manasseh. Right? Where's that come from? Manasseh didn't ask. They weren't part of this whole dialogue. They weren't part of the argument. What? Who says that they want to be the other side of the Jordan River? And Moshe Rabbeinu says, I'm going to give that land to you, and half the tribe of Manasseh. Huh? Half of the tribe. Yeah. So we're running out of time, and I need to tell you one other thing. So just before we do, this is in Hasidus held to be an issue of Mashiach. Why? Because it says that they had to conquer the seven tribes, and we know that there were 10. So the three tribes that are not mentioned there, who have names but we don't have time to go through it, those tribes, we learn that their land will be given to us after Mashiach comes. Where was that land? On the other side of the Jordan River. And so why does half of the tribe of Manasseh have to be there as well? Because the whole brachas. Now I've got to explain. Just take a 1 minute detour. When Hashem gives a bracha, it comes down through natural causes, through natural means, not causes. The funnel is a natural funnel. It's nature. So, for example, I'll give you an example. When I was starting to learn Torah, and it says that when Mashiach comes, the whole world will know the same day, I remember thinking, how can that be? It's not possible. And then I remember sitting with Rabbi Feldman 100 years ago, and it was when we started to have the internet, and he said, you see, now with the internet you can see how it's going to happen. It's always going to happen. The prophecies come down through natural, through teva, through nature. So just like because we have the internet, everybody can experience it at the one moment. Before that, it couldn't be done. Even by radio, it couldn't be done. Even by TV, it couldn't be done. But now so when Mashiach comes, and so the brachas that come down to Am Yisrael come down through natural means, and at the top of that, it comes down through a Moshe Rabbeinu. There has to be a Moshe Rabbeinu in every generation. We say in davening every day that we believe in Hashem and Moshe Avdoi. So that there is a Moshe Rabbeinu in every generation. The brachas comes down through him. Why Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't allowed to go into Eretz Yisrael? Why not? Because of this whole story with the rock and the water. But Hashem tells him to go up and look, survey the land by looking, right? Why? Because Yeshua couldn't take Eretz Canaan and make it into Eretz Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu had to be the key to the lock, because the bracha has to come down through Moshe Rabbeinu. And then after he saw it, he was told to go up to the mountain and die. There's no need for his presence anymore. The bracha has to come down through him. So they asked for this land, God and Reuven, and Moshe agreed to it, but that's not Hashem giving them land. So he added half the tribe of Manasseh, so that they could be representative of the rest of Am Yisrael, that they should also, that this should be part of that.
That's where Jordan is.
Other side of the river.
Northeast.
Yeah, the West Bank.
The other side of the river, yeah. It's not
Bank
Israel
still in,
today.
Southeast
Today is
it's
Jordan.
Huh?
Jordan.
He said,
Yes.
he said Jordan.
Today is Jordan.
Southeast,
Jordan,
on the
yeah,
other
West
side of
Bank is
Jordan.
still in on this.
Now, I just want to finish with one last.
The very northwest corner of Jordan.
Want to finish with one last point. What is really exciting when you learn Chassidus is that you understand that your life is not only meaningful but absolutely critical to the whole business of existence and making a dira b'tak toinim, and that you're an instrument, you're a shliach of Hashem. So the Rebbe points this out to you. You want fulfillment. You want to live a life rather than exist. You have to take that same percentage, whatever it was, a little bit more, a little bit less, and you have to spend your life with those percentages. So you spend a day, you have to have some part of the day where you're learning Torah and focused on the mitzvahs. Not that you're doing them by rote, not that you're doing it by habit, but that you realize that this is that part of the day when you are dedicating Am Yisrael, your life, a portion of your life, to this spiritual level as well as the physical level. And then you have a proper life. You don't exist. You have a life.
That's including davening?
Cleaning, davening, yeah.
On top of it.
It's part of it.
Listen, the Rebbe said it's not an exact percentage, and not everybody can do it, but every Jew can do some. A Jew needs to understand that his life is a part of his life has to be spirituality as well. It's not enough. Jaguars aren't enough. Money isn't enough. Health isn't enough.
Same as the other way, not enough as well. Only to start the
Can we have a handicap?
For very few people, for 17%, it is enough. And those people in Eretz Yisrael who don't go to the army and who do that, if they're really, really sincere, they're doing it. You know, we ran out of time, but I tell you, you know, when in 1940, whenever after the war, when I don't remember whether it was the Gera Rebbe or the Bilza Rebbe who came to Israel. There was a chutzpahdik journalist, a woman, and she came to interview him, and I can't imagine a journalist wanting to interview the Lubavitcher Rebbe and him agreeing, right? But apparently she got in and with his consent, and she asked him, how is it possible that there are people who won't go into the army? We're taking a new country, we have nothing and nobody, and you're telling me that they've got to sit and learn and not your Hasidim, because his Hasidim, whichever he was, doesn't go in the army, right? So the Rebbe answered this. He said, I'm going to give you a moshel. He said, there's a town on the top of this mountain, and there's a mountain across it, and the army needs to take the town, and they can't climb up because they'll get shot from up there. So what do? They're going to take a cannon, and they're going to take a cannon up to the top of this mountain and shoot across to there. So they start to take the cannon. They're pulling the cannon, but it's up a mountain, and it gets heavy. It gets heavier and heavier and heavier. So somebody has a brilliant idea. We'll take the wheels off. Do you understand? That was his marshal. You want to take the wheels off? You're not going to go anywhere. You need the cannon needs the wheels. There needs to be Jews sitting and learning. I don't know how many. I have to tell you, my son gets very upset with this, and
Yeah,
a lot of Israelis get very upset with it, and they have a point of view because a lot of them aren't genuine.
Government can fall from there.
I'm just stopping the tape.
The government can
I
fall
stopped to recording.
Robert.
Now I can say anything you like.
Robert,